Labyrinth is a 1986 film directed by Jim Henson and written primarily by Terry Jones, but with contributions from Dennis Lee, Laura Phillips, Elaine May, and George Lucas. It tells the tale of Sarah, a 15-year-old girl who enjoys fairy tales and resists her parents' call for her to grow up and be more responsible. Jareth, the Goblin King, appears and kidnaps her infant brother, Toby. Sarah is tasked with recovering Toby from Jareth's labyrinth, meeting colorful characters along the way, learning to solve problems, and learning to take control of her own life. Much is said about the sexual content in Labyrinth, and I will certainly not be the first to broach the subject, but the sexual themes in the film are usually spoken in jest. Instead, let's discuss this in earnest. To understand this content as well as why it's there in the first place, we must first explore the history of fairy tales and folklore. Fairy tale is usually the term given to folklore with European fantasy elements. Understanding the meaning of a fairy tale and whether or not it takes on aspects of a fable, that is, having a moral, is challenging because the original versions of the story were told orally, and the only versions that have truly survived were those eventually written and translated, perhaps mistranslated. One of the most common interpretations of many fairy tales is that of warnings against sexual advances for young women. For example, the most famous version of Little Red Riding Hood, translated by Charles Perrault, is said to have overt sexual themes. This interpretation has been carried over to modern retellings, like Into the Woods. These stories may only unconsciously give the larger lessons to children, but for grown-ups, fairy tales may seem very adult. This also describes Labyrinth. In short, fairy tales can be used as instructions for children passing into adulthood, specifically lessons about sex and danger. The fact that Labyrinth has sexual imagery doesn't make the film dirty or inappropriate for children. Its PG rating is spot on. The imagery simply will not register so explicitly with youngsters. The film discusses growing up and maturity in a way that is permissible for younger viewers. It's there and it's supposed to be there, but that doesn't make this a blue film. Labyrinth is the story of Sarah being told by outside forces to grow up their way, especially when it comes to romance and sex. In the beginning of the film, her stepmother tells her that she should be going on dates by now. Sarah wants none of this. She then meets Jareth, a figure that is both villain and potential romantic partner. Bear in mind that Sarah is 15, and Jareth is, well, David Bowie. Jareth makes romantic advances towards Sarah throughout the film. People joke that there is a sexual subtext in Labyrinth, but it's actually just text. There is nothing ambiguous about the ballroom scene. And towards the end of the film, Jareth's intentions are overt, not subtextual.
Just fear me, love me, do as I say, and I will be your slave.
In addition to Jareth's clear intentions on the surface of the film, there are also visual clues, and not just his bulging crotch. He also carries other sexual symbols, like his cane and his orbs. Jareth is the embodiment of what Sarah believes would be an adult relationship, both in terms of what she desires, but also fears. Jareth has hoggle, gives Sarah a poison peach. Fruit has its own sexual connotations. When she eats the peach, it is then that she has her romantic hallucination, which is complete with guests rubbing phallic masks. The adult situation makes her nervous, and the guests grope her as she tries to leave, eventually being forced to violently break out. Temptation is foreshadowed early in the film, with the introduction of the snake, an ancient spiritual symbol of being tempted. And what about her baby brother, Toby? He is the physical manifestation of adult responsibility, and, frankly, the consequences of sex. Sarah doesn't want to have to take care of Toby. She doesn't want that level of adult responsibility, at least not so soon. Sarah's looming adulthood, being stalked by time, is presented with a ticking clock, counting down to the inevitable, and Sarah's refusal to be controlled by it.
In 9 hours and 23 minutes, you'll be mine.
Although much beloved, the magic dance scene doesn't really tell us much about what's going on beneath the surface of the film. The lyrics have about as much to do with the plot as it is a reference to the 1947 film The Bachelor and the Bobby Soxer.
Hey, you remind me of a man.
What man?
The man with the power.
What power?
The power of hoodoo.
Hoodoo?
You do.
Do what?
Remind me of a man.
What man?
Man with the power.
Jareth is actually a fascinating character if we look at how he relates to Sarah. He is called the Goblin King, but he doesn't actually look like any of the goblins. Some fans of the film have inferred from this that Jareth is simply human, and that he was taken to a previous Goblin King, much in the same way that Toby was. Kidnapped. But in the original screenplay, before a different ending was decided, Jareth's form was meant to be explicitly shown to be an illusion, and when Sarah rejects his romantic advances, he returns to his goblin form. There is some debate over what we are witnessing when we watch Labyrinth. A young woman quite literally taken to a fantasy world, or a more figurative representation of her internal struggle with growing up, and the expectations people have of her. Not a dream exactly, but her imagination sorting through her struggles. Her bedroom is filled with items that end up populating the fantasy world later in the film. The music box with her dress from the ball, a stuffed animal resembling Sir Didymus and his eye patch, the labyrinth itself, a Goblin King doll, and a picture of David Bowie as someone else. Not to mention the MC Escher print on her wall becomes the scene right before the final showdown. The dog shows up in her fantasy world too. In spite of all this sexual imagery, Labyrinth is not a movie that sexualizes a young woman. That may be, well, inappropriate. It's actually more akin to old fairy tales. It's about someone growing up and learning to empower herself, romance and all, and make it something that she controls. Not men. Certainly not older men. In the end, she achieves her goals. She grows up a little, but she does so in a manner of her choosing. She holds on to her fantasy friends because, as she puts it, from time to time she will need them. Sarah has achieved complete agency in her maturity, both sexual and otherwise. And that appears to be the central theme of the film. Not just growing up, but control. Look at the final scene. Sarah celebrates with her friends. Representations of bravery, Didymus, strength, Ludo, and loyalty, Hoggle. And outside is the owl, Jareth, sexuality. She's only 15, and she will only let the owl in when she is ready. Until then, it can just fly away. Hi everyone! Who likes Twilight? Wait, don't go away! My next big episode is on the Twilight films. All of them. And to promote this big project and also because I want to interact with my audience more, I'm actually going to be marathoning all 5 Twilight films this Thursday. And the good news is you can join the fun, or what fun there is to be had watching Twilight. Go to this username and use this hashtag on Twitter all day from about 9 a.m. until whenever I finish this thing. It's all happening on Twitter, and I'll be live tweeting my progress, giving my initial thoughts on the movies, screen capping weird stuff, all that. If you want to join the discussion or offer insight on something that maybe I'm missing, you can. I'll try to reference your contributions to the discussion in the credits of the episode. But you have to use that hashtag, otherwise it will be very difficult to search for everything. So, I'll see you Thursday, and thanks for your time.